French literature begins long before France itself existed. To trace its earliest roots, we have to step into the chaotic world that followed the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. An age where old Roman towns crumbled, Germanic tribes reshaped the land, and Christianity spread across a fractured landscape. In this scattered, large, and uncultivated territory, strong figures like Clovis and Charlemagne emerged, building vast realms that stretched across much of Western Europe.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Lit Center channel. This is part 1 of our new series on French literature, and in this video we will travel back to the centuries after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. We will explore how the Franks established early kingdoms in the region of present-day France, how the rise of Christianity transformed society, and how Latin texts and early vernacular writings laid the foundations for French literature. We will also see the impact of major figures like Clovis and Charlemagne. And today we finish with a look at the earliest Old French epic, the Song of Roland. So let's dive in and let's discover where the roots of French literature lie.
The history of French literature begins after the dethroning of Romulus Augustulus and the subsequent collapse of the Roman Empire in 476. The area that makes up present-day France at the time was only a patchwork of former Roman provinces. These provinces gradually came under the control of various invading Germanic tribes, most importantly the Franks. The existing Roman institutions and infrastructure did not simply disappear with the collapse of the empire, rather it gradually fell into misuse or decay. Over time, local villages started adapting to a mix of Roman traditions and new Germanic influences. 50 years after the collapse of the Roman Empire, the region was still fragmented. Northern Gaul was now dominated entirely by Salian Franks, while other areas were ruled by local counts, bishops, or smaller Germanic groups. But for ordinary people, mostly farmers, life looked largely the same as it did under Roman rule. It was still centered around family and obligations to local lords. Towns survived in some regions, but commerce and administration were limited compared to the Roman period. During these centuries, religion was transforming society in crucial ways. The Franks, like many Germanic peoples, had long followed pagan beliefs, honoring gods such as Wodan and Donar, the continental counterparts of the better-known Scandinavian gods Odin and Thor. Christianity, however, which was already established in large towns, started to spread into the large Germanic countryside. And this was largely due to the actions of one man, Clovis or Chlodovech. He was the first Frank who united all the Frankish tribes and who succeeded in conquering the entire former Roman province of Gaul. He was the first Germanic king to convert to Christianity, a crucial step in the construction of the Frankish Empire. The baptism of Clovis around 496 marked a major shift. It tied the Frankish kings to the church, gave them broad political legitimacy, and helped integrate Roman cultural traditions into the Germanic way of life. In the centuries after Clovis's reign, much of written culture was produced in monasteries, where monks preserved knowledge, copied texts, and composed new works in Latin. Now, these texts were not literary in the modern sense. They were primarily religious and moral writings, but they do hold significant historical value, since they offer a rare window into early Frankish society and culture. One of the most remarkable of these works is Gregory of Tours' Historia Francorum, the history of the Franks, completed around 590 AD. Gregory was a bishop in Tours, and his history is much more than simply a chronological record of kings and battles. He blends oral traditions, miracles, and anecdotes to tell the story of the Frankish people. For example, he recounts Clovis's conversion to Christianity, describing not only the political and religious significance, but also the legendary episodes surrounding his baptism. He also preserves stories of local saints, bishops, and hermits, providing glimpses into the lives of ordinary people. Alongside historical writings, saint lives became a major literary genre. Texts such as the Vita Sancta Martini and Vita Radegundis described the actions of Christian figures and recorded both documented events and later legend. Monks also produced liturgical books, which are prayer books, psalters, and sacramentaries. These works helped standardize church practices. Monks recorded legal material too. The most notable example is the Lex Salica, the law code of the Salian Franks. It organized rules on inheritance, property, and compensation for injuries, drawing both on Roman legal practice and long-standing Frankish customs. Its preservation in monastic manuscripts gives one of the clearest views into early medieval law and administration.
Now is also a good time to discuss the language spoken in early medieval France.
Modern French belongs to the Romance language family because it is a descendant of Latin. By the 5th and 6th centuries AD, the spoken Latin of everyday life had drifted far from the polished classical Latin used in Julius Caesar's time. In early medieval France, most people spoke Vulgar Latin, the informal, constantly changing speech of ordinary communities. As this spoken Latin evolved differently from region to region, it eventually produced the various Romance languages: Spanish in Spain, Italian in Italy, and in the lands of the Franks, French. This transformation was gradual, and in the early Middle Ages, the line between Vulgar Latin and the earliest forms of French is often hard to clearly define. So, just to be clear, even though people in early medieval France spoke evolving forms of Vulgar Latin, the texts we discussed earlier were still written in Latin, not in what we would call Old French. The earliest truly French passages only begin to appear in the late 9th century. The most famous is the Strasbourg Oaths of 842, which show clear Old French features and mark the point where written language begins to diverge sharply from Latin. Around the same time, short Old French glosses, which are essentially notes added in the margins of Latin manuscripts to, for example, give an explanation of what is being said in Latin, also appear, offering some of the first glimpses of French as a distinct written language. Charlemagne was the king of the Franks and ruled an empire that stretched across the whole of Western Europe. In 800 AD, the Pope placed an imperial crown on Charlemagne's head and declared him Emperor of the Romans. This act created a new Western Empire and claimed continuity with ancient Rome. Both France and Germany trace the beginning of their national history to Charlemagne. Unlike earlier Frankish kings, Charlemagne was deeply invested in promoting education, literacy, and culture. Under his reign, monasteries and cathedral schools flourished as centers of learning. Charlemagne encouraged the copying of texts, the preservation of classical works, and the standardization of Latin writing, an effort historians call the Carolingian Renaissance. This revival ensured that knowledge from the Roman world survived and could be studied and transmitted across Europe.
Although Latin remained the language of administration, law, and scholarship, Charlemagne's reforms indirectly helped the development of the vernacular. By promoting literacy and record-keeping, he created an environment where the emerging Northern French vernacular could eventually appear in writing. His court also became a center for scholars, poets, and clerics, blending Roman, Christian, and Germanic traditions, a cultural foundation on which later French literature would build.
Charlemagne's influence on later medieval literature was immense. His reign and legendary deeds became the central subject of the first major French epic, the Song of Roland, composed in the 11th century. The poem portrayed Charlemagne as the ideal Christian king, leading loyal knights against overwhelming foes. Beyond epic poetry, Charlemagne appears in numerous chronicles, saint lives, and moral tales, where he is depicted as a model ruler, defender of the church, and patron of learning. The Song of Roland, or La Chanson de Roland, is the most famous and earliest surviving epic poem in Old French, composed around the late 11th century, probably in the region of northern France. It belongs to the genre of the chansons de geste, which are heroic narratives celebrating the deeds of warriors, often connected to historical events but heavily dramatized. This poem tells the story of Roland, a Frankish knight and nephew of Charlemagne, who dies heroically defending the rear guard of Charlemagne's army during the Battle of Roncevaux against the Saracens, While the story is inspired by real historical events in 778, the poem transforms history into a legendary and moralized narrative, emphasizing on loyalty, bravery, and Christian faith. Let's listen to a short passage in Old French.
Païens s'adoubent des osbères sarzenaise. Toutes les plusures en sont doubles entraise. Las laurel moulbon sargouzaise. Seng d'espée de la servianaise.
Even in just these short opening lines, we can see several features of Old French: simplified grammar compared to Latin, flexible word order, and the vernacular vocabulary that would have been understood by a broad audience. Literally, the Song of Roland is structured with repetition, formulaic expressions, and parallelism, typical of oral heroic poetry. These features helped performers like jongleurs remember and recite long passages. The poem contrasts heroic ideals with moral and religious imperatives. Roland's courage is inseparable from his loyalty to Charlemagne and his faith in God, and the villainous Saracens are portrayed as morally and spiritually opposed to Christian order. The work also reflects a tension between individual heroism and collective responsibility. Roland's pride and refusal to blow his Olifant horn to summon Charlemagne contribute to the tragic outcome, teaching both valor and humility. Themes of loyalty, honor, and divine justice would echo into later medieval French literature, showing how La Chanson de Roland established enduring narrative conventions and moral frameworks for epic storytelling. In short, the Song of Roland is both a product of oral heroic culture and a key early example of written Old French literature, bridging historical memory, moral teaching, and the emerging literary vernacular of northern France.
So, that was a journey through the beginnings of French literature, from the monasteries of northern Gaul, where monks preserved histories, saint lives, and laws in Latin, to the first sparks of Old French in everyday speech and glosses. We have seen how the baptism of Clovis tied the Franks to Christianity, how Charlemagne's cultural revival gave literacy and learning a boost, and how all of this set the stage for the epic stories like the Song of Roland, where history, legend, and moral ideals come together in the vernacular. In the next episode, we will dive into the later medieval period where the world of knights, courtly love, and Arthurian legends takes center stage. We will explore how the vernacular truly comes alive in literature. I will see you next time.